Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our last. I gotta move my seat. Our last CME Palooza session of the day, and this is the one. This is our third time doing the. Let me bring up the slides. CME Puntua Lortu. For those of you who this is your first time watching, Puntua Lortu means Scott. Do you remember? Scott Cover. Sorry.
It means Derek, be quiet and let other people talk.
So disappointed. It means get to the point in Basque, of course. Everyone knows that. This is also a Pechacucha is what it takes off from. But the Pechacucha, people wanted us to pay them some money to call it a Pechacucha, so we changed it to Puntua Lortu. So the style is, it means get to the point. And the style of presentation is you get 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, auto-advancing. So a total or a maximum of for your presentation. So it really kind of forces the presenter to condense what they're trying to say. So these are a lot of fun. I appreciate all the people you see down below, except for Scott Kober, for putting together these presentations.
I don't appreciate you either.
So the different people, and I'll give a further introduction, but we have Daniel Guinea, we have Audrey Turnell, Scott Skyer, and Priya Wanchu. This is our first two-person Puntua Lortu. Kathy Bagano and Michelle Tyner will all be doing presentations. But of course, before we get to that, our sponsors, you know what I didn't say? Sorry. The CME Puntua Lortu is sponsored by ASIM. Thank you, Daniel. Gold sponsor, Genentech. Our silver sponsors are Helio Education Lab, Global Academy for Medical Education, Forefront Collaborative, CME Matters, and ASIM again.
Hello again.
Bronze sponsors, Vindico Medical Education, Thistle Editorial, RMEI, PVI, Primary Care Network, Platform Q Health, Paradigm, MyCME, Haymarket Medical Education, Connective, Impact Education, I3 Health, Highmark CE, Ethos CE, CMEology, Clinical Care Options, and ACHL. There are three ways to ask questions, and I know that these sessions go past pretty quickly, but you can still ask questions. Maybe we'll save them for the end if you have any. You can use the Google Slides link, which is found on the live page. You can use the one for myself for this session. You can use our Google text line to send in a question, 267-666-0CME, and you can also tweet your question using the CME Palooza hashtag. And one last, before we get started, our speaker disclosure slide, opinions, discussions, and or conclusions expressed are our own, and they do not represent an endorsement by or a position of our employer, its parent company, or affiliates. So with that, there's going to be a small delay between each presentation because I'm sharing my screen and I have to bear with me 1 second. And you get to see me twice. Oh, it's exciting. Daniel is our first. One moment, bring up his slides, which are right here.
That's it.
There we go. So the way this will work is I will give a quick introduction, ask Daniel if he's all set, and then we will get started. So using the power of 50 bits in CPD and CE, this might work. Executive Vice President for ASIM. Thank you, Daniel. Are you ready to get started?
Ready.
Okay, and you can start.
Alrighty. Well, I have a fantastically long commute to and from the office the days that I go in, so I do a lot of reading by listening. And recently working through the power of 50 bits, it dawned on me that this really is a great way to think about educational design and planning. So this is a picture of the book cover, if you want to go out and buy it or listen to it or whatever you might do. But it's really focused on individual improvement, hence why I was listening to it. But it works out nicely trying to relate it to CPD and CME educational design. And so that's what I'm going to try to do through these slides. My wife assures me that she processes much more information than this on a daily basis, and she probably does. But what I wanted to try to show you, which the book makes an important point of, is that our conscious minds, when we make decisions, can really only handle about 50 bits compared to the 10 gigabits that are going on below the surface. So there's just a lot of information that we have continually going back and forth. I'll bet you it's probably why you may not even seen the typo that appeared on the screen. I know you're all looking for it now, but basically that's what's going on when you and if you think about it in our CPD, there's so much information being transported. It's hard to catch the details, and so the point we'd like to make. Wow, I did that faster than 20 seconds. There we go. People are wired for inattention. That was the word, and inertia. This wiring is eons old, but gentlemen, it may be the explanation the next time you don't get the to-do list done, why our behaviors oftentimes will deviate from the underlying good intentions. Try it out with your wife, see if it works. No promises. But really, this kind of inattention and inertia is what keeps us doing what we've always been doing. So, as we wait for the next slide.
You know what, Daniel? Hold on. Sorry.
Everyone's paying attention now, at least.
All right, at least. I'm going to stop and bring up your slides again. I am on mine, and it's not coming back over, so give me 1 second.
No problema.
And I will reset. And I gotta escape out of here. All right. So what I'm gonna do is right here.
This is why Derek is now the assistant producer of
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's why Derek needs a new laptop, because he's been having some issues. Okay.
Whatever you do, don't get a PC.
Yeah, well, guess what I'm using. All right. All right, so I will, Daniel, I'll have to hand advance from now. Hold on. There we go. I'll have to hand advance. Just tell me when you're,
Okay.
when you're ready to move on. So go ahead.
Alrighty. So, relating it back to the CPD CE world, perhaps this wiring could explain, too, this persistent knowing versus doing gap that we can continually encounter. So, our needs assessments, projects, all of our efforts kind of are geared towards, let's try to close these gaps. Well, it's not that the healthcare providers we cater to are such bad people. You can advance. It might also explain the guideline gap. We've all kind of come across that information too. Why does it take 10 years for guidelines to get implemented? They've already been reinvented twice by that point. So again, this kind of behavioral gap relative to the inattention. 50 bits design, the whole point of it is Ted and Puntua Lortu, did I pronounce that right, Derek?
Close enough.
Fetchacucci, they're getting to the idea of, let's dial back some of this overload of information. We need to think about our target audiences and the fact that they are coming at us with this 50-bit processing limit. So some strategery borrowing from a recent president in his lexicon. What I'll do is share, it's going to be real brief, but this is really the kind of the crux of the book with these different strategies that you can employ, again, on a personal level, but I think they match up pretty nicely with what we're doing in educational design. And the great news is there's even outcomes to go along with them, at least according to the author. They really have been demonstrated to be successful and to demonstrate improvement. So it's kind of exciting. Are you still advancing, Derek, or is it?
It's going on soon now.
Back down its own. All right. So power strategies. Basically, the choices at the left are the three different buckets that these strategies can fall into. At the top is where we want to demand attention of our participants. At the bottom would be leveraging inertia. So you can see, I'll focus on the middle first, where we want we want folks to make a decision today, there's two ways to do it. Inertia would say, set the default option and let them ride it out, you know, and kind of ride that wave. They're requiring a choice or their attention, they have to stop and choose. So again, when you think about your content design, can we make folks actively choose the right or optimal decisions? Again, at the top of the page, you want to get them into the flow. That's going to be more of an attention grabbing type of approach. If you want to use the piggyback approach, that's going to be leveraging inertia. Think about reframing choices. Set the framework for what participants will think about and react to. And then, if you already have something that's engaging or attractive to them, go ahead and let them ride that out. Again, hopefully it's on the road towards the optimal decision or the choice. Or just try to gauge it participants and where their attention is naturally. Overarching this, the Uber kind of strategy, we want to make it simple. This is not keep it simple, stupid. This is not dumb it down for our audiences. We want to be smart about how we help them get to the optimal choices. So again, in the thinking about as you're planning education and planning out what the activities, how can we help folks get to the right choices so that they can adopt them into daily patient care? Overall, get folks to slow down and make a deliberate, active choice. It really is kind of simple. For our different types of learners in the audience, here's a different way of looking at it. Again, you have your overarching strategy at the top. Simplify it wisely. You have your enhancing strategies and your power strategies. I'm going to just mention quickly again in the middle, we want to make sure that we're framing the choices. You want to set up for success, right? So think about reframing your choices. Leverage inertia. It's kind of blocked off at the bottom. Inertia is off to the right. Demanding attention is off to the left. And I think this is really a creative way to help set up your educational design and go about planning for activities. So that's it. Again, the power of 50 bits. I think it really applies nicely to CPE planning and design. We're just kind of getting started with it at ASIM. I don't have any answers, but it just might work. And if you do decide to try it, let me know. My email should appear at the bottom, but you might not be able to see it because of the pictures. But we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. That was really great. I like, interesting new concept. I think a lot of us haven't heard of before. So that was great. Sorry for the little glitch in the middle. I think we are back and running okay now. I hope so. We will try again. Audrey, you are up next. Something happens like with Daniel, I'll just start it back up again where it paused, but I think we're okay now.
Okay.
Just to make you feel a little more nervous, even if you're not.
You know.
Okay, so the things you'll need to know. Audrey Turnell from, is it Turnell or Turneau?
Torno, like the watch with a lot less letters.
Oh, it is Turnell. Oh, okay, okay. From Paradigm. Thanks again for joining us, Audrey. Whenever you're ready, just let me know.
I'm good when you are.
Okay, and you can begin.
Well, welcome to CME. Your new job defines a part that you will play in a diverse industry, an industry I've been a part of for nearly 20 years. So in the next 6 minutes, I hope to give you some insights I wish I knew when I started. Today, you embark on a journey to help make a difference in the lives of patients just like you and just like me. Continuing medical education, or CME, is how healthcare specialists stay up to date with changes in medicine. Education, as a form of ongoing professional development, is utilized in the same way in many fields, because how things were done yesterday is nothing compared to how they are being done today or will be done tomorrow. CME is different from promotional education, which is developed directly by pharmaceutical and medical device companies. Promotional education is on one product and its FDA-approved indications. The pharma and AdvaMed codes lend guidance for these activities. CME is governed by standards developed by groups like the ACCME, EACCME, AMA, ACPE, and ANCC. It discusses all therapeutic options in an area, addresses professional practice gaps, is fair balanced, and independently developed. The National Faculty Education Initiative is a good resource for you, your CME staff, and faculty members with whom you collaborate. It's free, like CME Palooza, and it distinguishes the difference between CME and promotional education. Now, speaking of collaboration, there are many stakeholders in CMEs. So what kind are you? Accredited provider, educational partner, grantor, member organization, medical specialty, or state medical society, a publisher, advocacy group, health system, hospital, or medical school. They're all engaged in CME and are all possible future collaborators. No degree in CME? Me neither. Most of us have a unique story about how we got here. A medical degree or teaching certificate isn't required for every role. You will work with a wide variety of individuals while in this industry. Healthcare teams, educators, digital strategists, meeting planners, compliance officers, art designers, editors, technology vendors, patients. Where to meet these people? Join one of the many industry member organizations and expand your professional network. Engage with colleagues and share ideas. Within these groups, you can seek out opportunities for certifications and recognition of your achievements. Check with AMWA, the ACEHP, or the CIC. Never forget about your own development. When it comes to the development of education, it takes all the individuals I've mentioned and more. Whether designing for interprofessional teams or different generations, gather perspectives before starting. You'll soon see it is not only the places you can go, it's the numerous ways you can get there, each with diverse pros and cons. So how is CME designed? Professional practice gaps drive CME. Gaps are healthcare problems or areas that, if improved, will increase the quality of patient care. Medical literature, surveys, guidelines, outcomes data, these all help identify these gaps. And CME is striving to accelerate the adoption of changes into professional practice. Stronger patient care sooner. To bridge a gap, we craft a learning objective for the target audience. Activities educate on that objective and hopefully produce a desired measurable outcome. Measurements can range from post-test questions to chart audits. And this outcomes data, when analyzed, should be shared with all your stakeholders because it demonstrates that CME can move the needle. When companies employ a plan, do, study, act, or PDSA cycle, they are looking to evaluate their activities, see what's working for learners and what isn't. What could we change moving forward? Evaluating what's being accomplished during and at the conclusion of an activity provides insight for improvement in the development of future CME. Education is funded in a variety of ways. Your company may have a CME budget for your employees. You may collect membership dues or subscription fees. Learners may pay for your CME, or you may apply for educational grants from industry or even the government. You'll set a budget when you start and reconcile to it when you end. CME is a changing landscape, and we constantly consider what's next. Think about today's presentation and how social media is being used to disseminate education. What about infographics, storytelling, or virtual reality? Now, don't use these tools just because. Use them with purpose. Don't become overwhelmed. Get the right message to the right learners in a way that works for them. So we know what the right message is. Children are waiting for knowledge to be brought to them, but adults are on a quest for knowledge that matters to them, information to solve our problems. And while one never hopes to encounter a problem, it's bound to happen. A reminder is that a problem is just a gap and one that can be filled. Work towards success, but never fear failure. It often teaches us our greatest lessons in life. Consider the Grinch. It's that fictional green man who learned finally to love only after he failed to remove joy from the world. Though inspired by Dr. Seuss, let me share a story to send you on your way today. You have entered a field where medicine, technology, innovation, and education meet, where change is the constant and no grass will grow under your feet. You have now joined the hundreds of individuals who are not quite like you, but who try to help bridge the healthcare gaps between what is and what should be too. We have acronyms, oh many, with letters aplenty. Ones to join, to guide, to measure, some for glee. Evaluate what you accomplished so you can see the changes to embrace and what the future could be. Did you do it? Did it go well? Could it be better? Or was it just swell? Be aware of the guidelines and standards that govern our land to avoid the bang-ups and hang-ups that could happen where you stand. Compliance and transparency, they are tools of our trade, and they help us to avoid any mistakes that might be made. Don't be scared. Go and think outside the box. If no one ever had, would there be a vaccine for smallpox? Try using social media, even if you only lurk. And there are so many amazing partners with whom you can work. Some might seem odd enough to even make you blink, but join in the fun. and create education that will really make others think. So congratulations, today is your day. You're off to a great start. You're off and away. CME, your new home, the adventure ready for you to see, helping patients every step of the way. Patients just like you and just like me.
Yay! That was great, Audrey. Thank you. I'm happy that the slides went the whole way through without going out. I'm yaying for that as much as for your presentation. No, that's not true. That was really great. And I enjoyed the rhyming, of course. Did I tell the rest of you that you have to rhyme the whole way through? I can't remember if I mentioned that doing this. Thank you, Audrey. That was really fantastic.
Yeah, I have to say, Audrey, now for all those people who have a 4-hour training for their new employees, I think can be boiled down to 6 minutes now.
6 minutes. Then
exactly.
Just get to work.
Exactly.
All right.
You'll learn along the way.
Although I think Derek and I both had the same thing in mind. When your rhyme was swell, we thought a different word was going to be coming up in that spot.
Oh,
Of course not. Okay. Next up are Priya Wanchu and Scott Skyer from Haymarket Medical Education. Can you guys see the slides up on screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So they have a brief little intro that they're going to do, and then we'll get started with the run through. So go ahead.
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, everyone. Welcome. In this era of evolving healthcare with an increasing emphasis on the value of care, we all have an opportunity to make an impact. So that's clinicians and CME providers working together to help learners learn better and to help patients become more involved in the decisions about their own care. So more involved clinicians, more involved patients for better outcomes, which is a key component of this new value-based care model. So this afternoon, Priya and I are going to share with you a specific example of how we've seen this able to work through quality improvement education and a very strong collaboration that can provide an impact and a true enhancement of this value care model. While we're also talking about the IRB and the role that it can play in enhancing care overall. Derek?
Okay, if you are ready, you can start.
We are ready. And that all starts with a very strong collaboration. We know that no one can do it alone. To achieve quality improvement objectives, collaborations are really necessary. And it's really important for collaborators to have common interests and goals in mind so they can work together in a true team effort and really provide the level of support and care that's required in CME. So as you get started, it's really important to determine the steps for designing and implementing a multi-partner QIE initiative within a health system, which is the example we're providing. And then always ask if an IRB application is required, and then ask again, because sometimes it may not be clear even in the health system within the partners if an IRB is actually required for a QIE initiative. So we were responding to a specific request for proposal for improving the identification of risk factors in venous thromboembolism and multiple myeloma patients. So the objective was to improve clinicians' ability to identify and assess multiple myeloma patients at risk for VTE. And through this, we were able to identify a specific audience, a multidisciplinary health team within a closed system. So really to focus and meet the NQS priorities of safety, coordination of care, and dissemination of best practices, while we're also driving quality-driven endpoints. So through this process, we also recognize that QIE project components focused on committed and engaged partners throughout the collaboration. We needed to have an effective design which included quality improvement as well as an education component, assessing data to determine what the need is, incorporating patient education for patient engagement, and then assigning the correct deliverables. So through that, we identified a system that treats multiple myeloma patients with a focus on cost savings and quality measure to really focus on that value model. They already had a prophylaxis protocol in place and they wanted to enhance its utilization, and they provided us with access to data so we could really measure the impact within the specific closed system. So this team included the Florida Oncology ACO, the USF Health System as the provider, IMD as a data partner, Educational Measures as a platform partner, and then Haymarket Medical Education as an education partner, creating the quality improvement team to meet the objectives of the overall design. And through that process, we were also able to determine that we didn't think an IRB would be needed, but then guess what? We found out that it was. So we were facing some obstacles. We had an approved grant. We needed to go through all the process of an IRB. We had to submit the paperwork. There was now an increased review period, and we had to make timeline adjustments. So in order to do that, we had to identify a project champion. And we determined that through the pharmacy services director, who knew all about how the IRB process worked, helped us to write the application for the IRB, and then actually helped us to get it through the system. And this is a very key important point for everybody to realize that that project champion is really important. So let's talk about what an IRB is. Priya?
Sure. So an IRB is an institutional review board, and basically it functions to ensure the rights and welfare and the safety of human subjects. And so it's a group that's formally designated to review biomedical research and involving human subjects. Now, we felt very strongly that we didn't need to go through an IRB specifically because of the HHS regulations, where it clearly says that quality improvement activities do not satisfy the definition of research under this particular code. However, we had to. So there are three different types of IRB reviews. There's an exempt review, which our project did not fall under, but an exempt review is a minimal risk research project where it's basically involves research involving public officials, and that's no risk test surveys. Or we can go through an expedited review, which our quality improvement activity went through an expedited review, which was basically low risk research where we're trying to research using secondary data analysis or focus groups or surveys that have identifiable information and interviews. Or you have to go through a full IRB, and that's your clinical trial where that's determined to have more than minimal risk. This is where you need your protected populations if you're studying children, disabled people, prisoners, example, where procedures are intrusive or stressful. So important considerations that all institutions vary, and sometimes it takes 30 to 60 days or longer for an expedited or an exempt review, or 60 to 90 days or longer for a full board review. So we had to adjust our timelines accordingly, even though we went through an expedited review. So best practices: assemble your team,
designate a champion, and always be sure to ask the right questions of all the collaborators during the design. Most specifically and importantly, is an IRB required? And engage everyone. The spirit of collaboration could really work towards change. Don't get discouraged with barriers, keep at it, and always remember to build extra time into your timeline as needed, because you learn along the way that some things might happen in the QIE process that you didn't expect. And this is an ongoing curriculum and project. We're seeing great response to it. We're impacting on our endpoints as we expected to do. We have engaged patients that are truly part of the process, providing feedback to their clinicians, being involved in the shared decision-making process. So it's a true collaboration that's impacting on the quality of care that this system is providing to its patients, while it's engaging the patients to be more involved in that process of care. So it's a great fit to this value-based model and this value care model that we're all now going to be expected to follow as healthcare continues to evolve. Derek?
Great. Thanks, you guys. The great thing about this format is, let's be honest, IRB, maybe not the most fascinating subject in the world. So to condense it down, this is a great thing for people to come and watch. Quick little 5-6 minute presentation. It's really good. I do have a quick question for you that came in from the audience, asking, so what was the trigger issue for IRB? Why did you feel that you have to?
So we had to ultimately, because it was required of the institution. We partnered with the Oncology Care Organization, Moffitt Cancer Center, and Florida Blue, and they instructed us that even though it's a quality improvement initiative, it has to go through an IRB. So we filled in all the paperwork, the applications, and we got through an expedited review.
And again, it's interesting just to keep in mind, always ask the right questions, because we did ask that question initially, and even the members of the QI team in the institution didn't feel an IRB was required until the legal team found out what was happening, and then it was required based on the legal team's input. So that's why we say ask up front, get everyone involved in the decision, and then you can alleviate some of the stressors that you might experience later on. But we learn from it.
Okay, great. And this is, no, good. What I was just going to say is it's a good reminder that if you do have questions for anyone, you can tweet them to us. You can use our Google Slides app on the live page, and you can also send us a text. All right, so I think we are ready for Michelle. If quantitative data is king, then all hail the new queen. Qualitative data by Michelle Tyner, Director of Education Strategy at Archimedics. How you doing, Michelle?
I'm good. How are you?
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, and you can begin.
You may have heard the world is made up of atoms and molecules, but it's really made up of stories. When you sit down with an individual that's been here, you can give quantitative data a qualitative overlay. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next 6 minutes, is how to use qualitative data to enhance your quantitative data. And so with that being said, what is qualitative data? Well, qualitative data can't easily be reduced to numbers. It's more related to concepts, opinions, values, and behaviors of people in a social context. Qualitative research is exploratory research and really used to gain an understanding of underlying reasons why people do things. And it's really important to know that getting to understand the whole person, not just the numbers or the quantitative data, gives you a deeper understanding. It's not just the numbers, but it's understanding the stories and emotions behind that provides you with additional insight. Qualitative data is multidimensional. It allows us to understand context. Qualitative data allows us to understand people and how to make sense of their experiences. And qualitative data allows us to understand interactions and how the various people involved interact with each other on a daily basis. So what are the types of qualitative data? So there's structured text, which writing, stories, news articles, books. There's unstructured text, which includes transcriptions, interviews, focus groups, but it also includes music and graphics and art and pictures and other visuals that help to tell the story. So when you look at quantitative data versus qualitative data, there are specific conceptual differences. So qualitative data looks to understand human behavior and assumes a dynamic and negotiated reality, while quantitative data looks to discover facts about social phenomenon and assumes a fixed and measurable reality. Methodologically, they are also very different. Qualitative data is collected through observation and interviews, it's analyzed by themes, and it's reported in the language of the informants. While quantitative data is collected through measuring things and analyzing and reporting through statistical analysis and comparative and statistical inferences. So compare and contrast qualitative and quantitative data. So looking at World War II, by the numbers, 3% of the world's population were killed, including 6 million Jewish people. 127,000 people with Japanese ancestry were imprisoned in internment camps. And in the United States, more than 6 million women joined the workforce. So what does that look qualitatively? So in terms of the Holocaust, a great qualitative example is the Diary of Anne Frank. And with the Japanese internment camps, there are many similar accounts that will show you different similar stories as to Anne Frank. And clearly, Rosie the Riveter is an icon with women joining the workforce in the United States. There are also various collection methods. Observation, where the researcher gets close enough to study the subjects to observe with or without participation. Interviews that are structured or semi-structured. Focus group discussions that allow for a group small enough. In terms of being able to develop interview questions, there's a toolbox. There's 7 different qualitative forms of questions: hypothetical, provocative, ideal, interpretive, leading, loading, and multiple questions. What this allows you to do is to form your qualitative interviews. So when analyzing the data, it's very different from quantitative to qualitative. It is moving to understand the underlying interpretation of the people being investigated, and it's based on interpretive philosophy. The idea is to examine the meaningful and symbolic content of the qualitative data. There's two basic approaches. One is deductive, and the other is deductive. And with the deductive, that's mainly a portion of a bigger quantitative study, while inductive, it's designed to be the major proponent of the study. The focus and analysis, there's 4 basic focal points: content, attitude, individual, group, and shared ideas, and actual versus hypothetical experiences. What this allows you to do is to focus your analysis and get a bigger picture so that you're looking at all of the different qualities. So the driving principles of qualitative data analysis is really my perception is your reality. Social phenomenon cannot be understood outside of its own context, and exceptional cases provide unique insight. It's the outliers that tell the story in qualitative data. Key features of qualitative analysis, it's really where it's different from quantitative is it's circular and nonlinear, which can be a challenge for scientists for sure. It's iterative and progressive, but ideally what you have to understand outside of that, the different levels of analysis, is qualitative data by itself is meaningful. There are different variations in qualitative reporting. There's problem solving, there's a narrative approach, policy approach, analytic approach. And these various approaches to reporting the qualitative data allow you to either describe how you're solving the problem. When you're interpreting the data, it's important to explain the core meaning of the data, to organize and connect the themes, to be able to provide generalizations, and to show that you have credible and trustworthy interpretations of the overall data. Finally, outside of that, the one unique approach to qualitative research is that you can use quotes. There's 3 different types of quotes, and there's different ways to use the quotes. But being able to use what the participants say in your reporting is key in reinforcing the underlying themes. In the end, it's good to be queen, because being able to provide a story that supports the quantitative data that's presented only strengthens the overall report when you use qualitative data. So it truly is good to be queen.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Michelle. 2 questions for you, actually. First one was more sort of general. How often are you using qualitative data analysis in your kind of your day-to-day job, basically?
Through Archimedics, we're able to use qualitative data quite a bit. It's something that I reinforce consistently with our partners, in that we're able to collect qualitative data unlike any platform's been able to do before. So it's certainly something that I'm a big proponent of. Coming from a scientific background and merging into the social research for the educational degree, I've found a new love for qualitative data.
And then the second question was, do you use software for analysis, and how do you identify an appropriate qualitative methodology?
Okay, well, that's like the whole different hour-long presentation. There is software.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so there is software out there. And then when you have to go into the research with a question and then kind of develop, and it's really dependent on your subjects, on how best you can research them. I know for a lot of stuff that I've been looking at, it's interviews and small focus groups, because nobody really wants me to go into an operating room.
You never know.
Well, that's true.
Maybe not right now. That'll be next CME Palooza. How about that?
There you go.
Okay. Well, thanks, Michelle. That was really great.
Thanks.
Our next presentation is Kathy Pagano, whose presentation is so powerful that I can't run it myself because of my crappy laptop. So Scott, that is why Scott is on here, because he is going to run this particular.
I don't trust him. I don't trust him.
I wouldn't either. I don't blame you. But anyway, so thank you, Kathy. We're not just making a living. We're making a difference. Kathy Pagano, president of CME Matters. Scott, are you there?
I'm here. I'm ready. Ready whenever you are. Just give me the word.
Okay. You tell her when you're going to start.
What word do you want, Scott?
Go.
Okay. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Audrey's presentation, and I'll ask all of us who are already in the business, how did we get into this insane business, and why do we stay? And I have those days very often. So it might be nice to end this CME Palooza with some inspiration. And I think we forget that what we are doing is actually making a difference in people's lives. They're real people that we're working with here. Scott, you started it too slow. Okay.
He started a little slow, but that's all right.
I know, he's a little slow. So what we do, this is going to be very fluffy. You're not going to learn anything earth-shattering. You're not going to need your pen, so you can put them down. And I have to use a teleprompter, just like our beloved presidential candidates. But I promise not to use the word. Never mind. But so my goal here is simply to remind us about how powerful CME is and that we are affecting real people. So what I did is I asked a bunch of my faculty for some stories, and they were very excited, as you can see. They couldn't decide which real-life story they wanted to share with me. I think it boiled down to which story really upset them the most, and I bet if we asked all of us to submit a story or two, we could write one hell of a book and make a ton of money. So some of the stories are frightening. They're all true, and we've heard them in one form or another. And I'd like to think about them when I have those moments of, why am I in this business? I could be doing very good work in the tile department at Home Depot, and I'd be very, very happy doing so. So let's talk about some patients. So the first case is a little kid who presents in the ER for the third time. He's diagnosed with conjunctivitis and prescribed some antibiotics. And on the third time, his mom finally got smart enough to bring him to an expert. But by the time the expert saw him, his left eye was completely diminished. And despite being transferred to a specialty hospital, it was too late. This poor little kid ended up losing his left eye completely, which was senseless. So the lesson here is wasted time in diagnosing a patient properly can result in catastrophic results, as I'm sure we've all seen stories like this in our business. So before I talk about the next two cases, I have to give you a little background of NPNs, or none of this is going to make sense. There's basically three types of NPNs, PV, ET, and MF. MF is the most serious one, and JAK2 mutations are key. So that's all you have to know before you get into the next two cases. So patient goes to a local a hematologist's office, and he is shown to have elevated platelets. He's tested for that famous JAK2 mutation, which is good, and it comes back positive. So the local doc declares this to be ET, which is not the very serious type. And he does no further workup and sends the poor guy home. Patient returns with worsened symptoms. He's finally referred to our expert, who acknowledges that, yes, this guy has elevated platelets, but he also has other symptoms that point to MF, the more serious one, which the local MD evidently missed. Our next patient is another hematology patient. He goes to the office and he is diagnosed this time with MF, the more serious one. He is tested for the JAK2 mutation along with some other minor symptoms, but he's otherwise feeling very well. Regardless, this local doc immediately starts him on a drug that is indicated for second-line treatment. Very strong drug. Eventually, the patient gets smart and seeks a second opinion, who recommends instead to watch and wait. Disturbingly, this happens way too often. It's very concerning to my expert. These patients are being exposed to toxicity and drug costs for no good reason, other than the local doc had a knee-jerk reaction. So moving back up to the eye, here's a patient who comes into a local optometrist's office complaining of red blurry vision for several weeks. The optometrist spends 3 minutes with him and prescribes an antibiotic with a corticosteroid, and he's told to stop treatment in 3 days, which he does when he's showing some improvement. However, a week later, he's back and his vision is worse. Turns out abruptly stopping a topical steroid is a big no-no, and he shouldn't have been on an antibiotic at all. He has an entirely different, he needed an entirely different class of drugs. So he's going to take weeks of treatment and follow-ups to undo the harm that was done to this guy. Recently, I was on the phone with a lung cancer expert planning a new initiative. Coincidentally, we were chatting about the dire need for education in this area, and I was shocked to find out how big a gap there was amongst practicing oncologists. Shocked and disturbed. So as we're on the phone, he gets a disturbing email and asks if he can pick up this call tomorrow. You see, it turns out the email was from an NP who was seriously questioning the treatment regimen her doc was prescribing for a patient. And my faculty wanted to get back to her immediately before any harm was done. So of course, before I let him go, I asked him what hospital she was from so I could take a note, if you know what I mean. Scott knows this story. It's always one of my faves. A colleague of ours developed a very cool heart attack simulation pod that was brought to the AHA convention. It was very popular, long lines, cool stuff. One cardiologist left the pod very abruptly, pushing past our colleague who was interviewing everyone as they exited. Turns out this cardiologist had been on the phone earlier that day with his own mother. Evidently, she was complaining of the same symptoms he had just experienced in the simulation. So as he rushed past our colleague, he shouted, "I have to get to my mother. I think she's having a heart attack," and I missed it. This guy was a cardiologist. So I know we have to jump through the hoops, and today we've learned all about fancy learning styles and innovative educational designs, and we do all kinds of fancy reporting, and we gloat over our percentage improvement numbers. But I think we all need to remember that these patients, they're real patients. They're not fancy statistics. And so the next time you're sitting next to somebody on a flight and you clearly have your headphones on and you don't want to be bothered, which happened to me again last week, and they ask you what you do for a living, you can actually say that you're making a difference in patients' lives and people's lives. Most people, when I have the chance to really explain to them what the heck we do, think it's pretty cool and very important. And if all the skeptics and naysayers had their way and funding for our industry went away, I would ask those naysayers, do you feel that your own healthcare professionals are up to date and everything they need to know before treating you?
All right. I feel like we should do a big CME cheer or something.
That's the last slide.
CME. Yeah, that was the last slide.
Yeah.
Do you have more to say?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Of course you are. Thank you, Kathy.
Minutes. 6 minutes is up.
6 minutes and 40 seconds, actually.
Oh,
all right, great. Thanks all of you for your presentations, for working on these Puntua Lortus. I know they're only 6 minutes and 40 seconds, but they are a lot of work compared to any of these guys can tell you. They put a lot of time and effort into these, so I do appreciate that. And with that, that ends our CME Palooza fall. We did have one question. Someone asked what my shirt says. It's the vet. For those of you from Philadelphia. What are you looking at, Scott? You know where the vet is. Come on.
I'm looking at on Twitter. They have trend topics in New Haven, Connecticut. #1, CME Palooza.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, right. Oh, I should put in one last plug. If you have not taken the survey, please take our survey. It's on the live page right above the video. You don't have to. You're not getting any credits or anything for this, but it's helpful for us to get a sense of how many people watched, what sessions you liked, any suggestions you have. And we used a fair amount of suggestions for, especially for this one, I would say. I think a couple of these, like the Mythbusters and some of the others, came directly from suggestions that people made. So we do actually read the evaluations. I read them anyway. Scott just kind of throws them down and storms out, but nothing new there. Scott, any last words you would like to offer before we...
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks again to all of the Puntua Lortu folks, and thank you all for watching. And with that,
see you next spring.
See you in spring.
Bye.